Deemed unfit for mating, the alien girl was cast aside, until a human stepped in. Towering cities of crystalline structures stretched toward the heavens, shimmering like jewels from the distant plains below. The Elari, a humanoid alien race, thrived here. They were tall, graceful, and had skin that shifted in color with their emotions. Their society was advanced, elegant, and governed by strict rules. Every Elari was evaluated for their abilities and their suitability to contribute to the species. From birth, each child underwent tests to determine their physical, mental, and emotional traits. Among these children was Lyra, a girl with silver blue eyes and hair that shimmered like liquid starlight. She had always been quiet, observing rather than participating. Lyra had a curious mind and a kind heart, but her body did not meet the standards of the elders. A rare mutation in her physiology made her slower in some physical tasks and different in ways the Elari considered unfit. The day of the evaluation came. Lyra stood in the center of the grand chamber, surrounded by the gaze of the council of elders and her peers. Her heart pounded. She had hoped that her intelligence and creativity would be enough, that her gentle and caring nature might be recognized. But the elders were cold and unyielding. "You are unfit," the eldest, a silver-skinned Elari named Vorath, announced. His voice echoed through the chamber, leaving no room for argument. "You do not meet the standards required to contribute to the future of our people. You will be cast aside." Gasps filled the room. Some of Lyra's classmates whispered to each other, a mixture of pity and fear in their tones. Lyra's chest tightened. She had known this moment might come, but hearing it aloud, feeling it, made her stomach twist with despair. She was escorted from the chamber by neutral guides, those assigned to ensure the outcast left without incident. She walked silently, avoiding the stares of those who had once called her friend. Children she had grown up with turned away, and adults gave her looks of cold judgment. Even the sunlight seemed sharper, harsher, as if the world itself agreed with the council. Lyra found herself in the outskirts of the city, where abandoned structures leaned like broken giants. Here, the light of the twin suns barely touched the ground. Dust swirled around empty streets, and the hum of the city felt distant, almost unreal. She was alone. Truly alone for the first time in her life. Despite the emptiness, Lyra felt a flicker of determination. She was not broken. She had knowledge, curiosity, and a mind that could see possibilities others ignored. She would find a way to survive, to live, and perhaps to prove that the elders were wrong. Far above the city, in the human settlement of Nova Base, the situation on Vyrlia was being observed with interest. Humans had come to Vyrlia years earlier, studying the Elari and their culture, learning from them while sharing technology and knowledge. Among the humans was Ethan, a young xenobiologist with a reputation for seeing the value in things others overlooked. Ethan had heard about Lyra, not her name, but the story of a young Elari girl who had been cast aside as unfit. While many humans found the Elari's rules rigid and cruel, Ethan was curious. What was it about her that the elders rejected? He wanted to understand. He decided to visit the outskirts that evening. Nova Base's hovercraft glided silently above the abandoned sectors. When he landed, he carefully made his way to Lyra's shelter, a small structure made of reinforced crystal fragments and old metal scraps. From a distance, he watched her. She moved with a quiet grace, inspecting old tools and broken devices scattered across the floor. "Hello," Ethan called softly. Lyra looked up, startled. Her silver blue eyes widened at the human figure approaching. Humans were rare here, and they usually stayed within the safety of their base. This one was different, tall, with bright eyes and a gentle expression. I didn't expect anyone," Lyra said cautiously. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. "I didn't expect to find you either," Ethan replied with a small smile. "My name is Ethan. I've heard about you. I wanted to meet you to see for myself." Lyra studied him, unsure if she should trust him. Her life had been filled with disappointment and rejection, and strangers rarely brought good news. But there was something about his calm demeanor, the genuine curiosity in his eyes, that made her hesitate before dismissing him. Why would you want to meet me?" she asked. "Because you're interesting," Ethan said simply. "Not because of what you failed at, but because of what you can do, what you can see that others might miss." Lyra felt a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Someone had recognized her worth, not her flaws. Over the next few days, Ethan returned regularly. He brought books, tools, and devices from the human base. They would sit together in the quiet, discussing everything from science to art, philosophy to the strange differences between humans and Elari. Lyra was fascinated by humans, their ways, their curiosity, their willingness to explore ideas that Elari culture sometimes dismissed. In turn, she taught Ethan about the nuances of her species, the subtle color changes in their skin that expressed emotions, the intricate social codes, and the forgotten knowledge buried in abandoned parts of the city. Lyra began to feel alive in a way she never had before. The world was no longer just a place where she had been rejected. It was a place of learning, discovery, and possibility. She tinkered with old machines, built devices that even the humans found clever, and experimented with theories that had been considered useless by Elari society. Ethan noticed her growing confidence. "You're talented," he said one evening as they worked on a small, hovering drone. "I don't think you realize how much potential you have. The world doesn't define your worth, your actions do." Lyra smiled faintly. "I've always felt different," she admitted. "But I thought different meant wrong. Now I'm starting to think it means something else." Their friendship deepened, built on trust, respect, and a shared sense of curiosity. For the first time, Lyra felt that she belonged somewhere, not within the rigid confines of Elari society, but in a place where her mind, her heart, and her courage could shine. Yet, despite these moments of hope, the shadows of rejection still lingered. Other Elari whispered about her in the streets, and some of the elders kept a watchful eye on the outskirts. Lyra knew that her path would not be easy. The world outside the city was filled with dangers, both natural and societal. But she also knew that she was no longer alone. She had Ethan, a human who believed in her, and a growing confidence in her own abilities. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Lyra and Ethan climbed to the top of an abandoned tower. The city stretched below them, glittering like a sea of lights. "Do you ever wonder why humans come here?" Lyra asked, gazing at the distant Nova base. "Sometimes," Ethan admitted. "But I think it's because we see value where others do not. We see potential. We see the story waiting to be written." Lyra looked at him, her heart swelling with a strange mix of gratitude and determination. "Then maybe my story isn't over," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Not at all. In fact, I think it's just beginning." As the stars emerged in the violet sky, Lyra felt a sense of purpose she had never known. The world that had cast her aside was vast, full of challenges and mysteries, but also full of opportunities. She was no longer merely the outcast, the one deemed unfit. She was someone who could change her own destiny, someone who could find her place not by the rules of others, but by the strength of her mind and the courage in her heart. And somewhere in the shadows of the city and the light of the stars, a human named Ethan would continue to walk beside her, guiding, learning, and believing in the impossible. For the first time in her life, Lyra smiled, not a timid, uncertain smile, but one full of hope. Her story had only just begun, and the universe awaited her next move. The twin suns rose over Violia, casting golden light across the crystal towers and shimmering streets. Lyra had not slept much, but it did not matter. She felt a spark of excitement in her chest as she prepared for another day of discovery. Today, Ethan had promised to show her something new, something from the human base that might help her understand technology in ways the Elari had never taught her. Lyra waited at the edge of the abandoned district, scanning the horizon for Ethan's hovercraft. When it arrived, hovering quietly over the dusted streets, she waved. The craft landed softly, and Ethan stepped out, carrying a small box filled with devices. "Good morning, Lyra," he said, smiling. "Ready to see something amazing?" Lyra's silver-blue eyes sparkled. "Always," she replied. Inside the box were small human inventions, simple tools with clever mechanisms. There were small drones, mechanical devices that could move with programmed instructions, and compact sensors that could measure temperature, air composition, and even subtle vibrations. Lyra ran her fingers over the machines, fascinated. Her mind raced with ideas. "Humans have a different way of thinking," Ethan explained. "We like to experiment, to test, to see what works even if it seems strange at first. Sometimes the most useful discoveries come from trying the unusual." Lyra nodded. She had always thought her mind too different for Elari society, but here, with Ethan's encouragement, her differences felt like strengths. She eagerly examined a small hovering drone, twisting and adjusting its components. "You're really good at this," Ethan said, impressed. "Have you ever built something like this before?" Lyra shook her head. No, not like this. The elders would not allow it. They only care about skills they consider useful for reproduction. Everything else is ignored. Ethan frowned. That doesn't make sense. Knowledge, creativity, and problem-solving are just as important as anything else. Lyra smiled faintly. That's why I like learning from you. You see things differently. For hours they worked together, Lyra quickly understanding the human inventions and even improving on some of the designs. She built a small drone that could navigate complex terrain without crashing, a skill that impressed Ethan greatly. "You're fast," he said. "Faster than most humans I've trained, and more precise." Lyra felt a warmth she had never experienced before. Recognition, encouragement, and understanding were new to her, and she cherished every moment. As they worked, they talked about their worlds. Ethan told Lyra stories about Earth, the planet humans came from, describing vast oceans, forests, and mountains. Lyra listened in awe. Humans had faced countless challenges, adapted to different climates, and created tools and machines that could reach the stars. "Incredible," she whispered. "Your people must be very strong." Ethan shook his head. "Not just strong, curious, determined, sometimes stubborn. But yes, we have learned a lot because we ask questions and explore even when others say it's impossible." Lyra thought about the Elari. Their society valued perfection, but in the process, they ignored the potential in those who were different. She realized that humans and Elari were alike in some ways, yet different in the way they approached life. Humans embraced curiosity and failure as a step toward growth, while her people often punished it. "You know," Ethan said, "I think the reason you were cast aside is not because you are unfit. It's because they are too afraid of someone who is different. Someone who can think in new ways." Lyra looked down at her hands, unsure how to respond. Her heart ached with the memory of rejection, but there was also hope. "Maybe you're right," she whispered. "But how can I change their minds?" Ethan smiled. "You don't need to convince everyone. You just need to show what you can do. Actions speak louder than words." As days passed, Lyra grew more confident. She explored the outskirts of the city, using the skills she learned from Ethan to repair old machines, build small devices, and create simple but useful tools. She discovered abandoned sectors filled with forgotten technology, machines that the elders had deemed useless, broken, or unimportant. To Lyra, they were treasures, full of potential. One afternoon, while exploring an old laboratory, Lyra found a storage unit containing holographic maps of the city, showing secret pathways and hidden chambers. She realized that if she combined these maps with her knowledge of machines, she could create new paths, traps, or devices that might one day protect the city from danger. When Ethan arrived to help her test one of her inventions, he was amazed. "Lyra, this is incredible. You've improved this device far beyond what I expected. You're thinking in ways even humans don't always think." Lyra felt a thrill of pride. For the first time, she was valued not for what society said she should be, but for what she could actually do. Their bond grew stronger each day. Lyra and Ethan spent hours sharing ideas, building machines, and exploring the abandoned city. Sometimes they would sit quietly on the edge of a crumbling tower, watching the twin suns rise and set, talking about their dreams and fears. "You know," Lyra said one evening, "I used to believe that being cast aside meant my life was over, that I had no place in the world." Ethan shook his head. "No, being different is never the end, it's just a beginning. You just have to find the right place and the right people who understand you." Lyra looked at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. "I've found one of those people," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "And I think you'll find more. You just need to be brave enough to keep exploring and learning." Despite the growing hope, the outskirts were not completely safe. Lyra knew that other Elari sometimes wandered into these abandoned sectors, and not all humans understood her presence outside the base. She learned to be careful, to plan her movements, and to anticipate problems. These lessons made her stronger, sharper, and more resourceful. One evening, while testing a small surveillance drone, Lyra noticed a group of Elari approaching the outskirts. They were Elders' scouts, tasked with monitoring the outcasts. Lyra's heart raced. If they discovered her working with humans, it could create trouble. Quickly, she activated the drone to create a distraction, leading the scouts away from her location. When Ethan arrived, he watched her maneuver the machine with skill and precision. "You're amazing," he said quietly. "You handled that better than most Elari soldiers could." Lyra smiled, a mixture of pride and relief. "I have to be careful." But I'm learning to survive and to thrive. As the days turned into weeks, Lyra's skills expanded. She repaired old hover vehicles, built small energy generators, and even started experimenting with human communication devices, hoping to create a link between Nova Base and the outskirts. Each success boosted her confidence, proving that she could contribute to the world in ways the elders never imagined. But learning was not only about machines. Lyra also learned about human emotions, empathy, and teamwork. Ethan encouraged her to express herself, to trust her instincts, and to believe in her ideas. Slowly, Lyra realized that her value was not measured by rigid standards, but by her actions, her courage, and her heart. One evening, as they watched the violet sky turn to deep indigo, Lyra asked a question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Ethan, why do humans care so much about helping others, even when it's risky or difficult?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Because we believe that every life has value. Every person, every being has something important to offer. We don't always know what that is at first, but we try to help, because the world is better when everyone has a chance to contribute." Lyra nodded slowly. She thought about her own society, how the elders had judged her without seeing her full potential. Perhaps there was something humans understood that Ilari had forgotten. That worth is not measured by appearances or rules, but by courage, creativity, and kindness. That night, Lyra lay in her small shelter, thinking about the days ahead. She knew she had much to learn, many challenges to face, and obstacles to overcome. But she also knew she was not alone. With Ethan's guidance, her own determination, and the growing knowledge she had gained, she felt ready to face the unknown. Tomorrow, she would continue to explore, to build, and to learn. And perhaps one day she would show the world, including the elders, that being different was not a weakness but a strength. For the first time since she had been cast aside, Lyra believed in herself. The outcast was no longer just surviving, she was preparing to thrive. And somewhere in the quiet outskirts of Violia, with the twin suns rising once more, a human named Ethan would continue to guide her, learning from her as much as she learned from him, proving that together they could face anything. The twin suns of Violia blazed in the morning, sky casting long shadows across the crystal towers of the city. Life in the outskirts had grown routine for Lyra, yet she could feel a quiet tension in the air. The elders of the Ilari, though distant, still watched. Their society had not forgotten her, and their whispers about the outcast girl often reached even her secluded shelter. Lyra, however, had grown stronger and wiser. Her days with Ethan had sharpened her mind and skills. She had repaired old hover vehicles, built small drones, and designed devices that even humans found clever. Yet nothing in her previous experience had prepared her for what was coming. It began subtly. Strange energy readings appeared on the sensors Ethan had installed in the outskirts. Small tremors shook the abandoned streets, and the local wildlife behaved unusually, fleeing the area without reason. At first, Lyra thought it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a storm or minor tectonic shift. But when she examined the energy readings more closely, she noticed a pattern. Something was approaching Violia. Ethan was the first to understand the danger. "These readings aren't natural," he said, analyzing the data. "They're from a ship or many ships entering Violian space, and judging by the energy signature, they're not friendly." Lyra's heart pounded. "Not friendly? What do you mean?" "They could be a hostile species," Ethan explained. "Their technology is advanced, and their energy patterns show aggression. They may attack the city." Fear and determination mixed in Lyra's chest. She had always imagined danger as distant, something in stories or simulations. Now it was real, and the lives of countless Ilari and humans were at risk. Ethan and Lyra quickly devised a plan. Using her drones, Lyra would scout the outskirts and city perimeters, providing real-time information on the enemy's approach. They also prepared communication devices to alert the human base and any sympathetic Ilari. Lyra felt a thrill of purpose. For the first time, she was contributing in a way that truly mattered. Hours later, the first signs of the threat appeared in the skies above. Sleek, dark ships moved with precision, their surfaces reflecting the light of the twin suns. The Zarathi, a hostile alien species known for raiding planets rich in resources, had arrived. Their ships emitted low, humming vibrations that shook the city, sending Ilari citizens into panic. The elders of the Ilari convened in emergency session, but their approach was typical, rigid, cautious, and slow. They debated the morality of engaging the enemy, as if deliberation could stop an attack. Many refused to allow unfit individuals like Lyra to assist in any way. Lyra clenched her fists. Watching the city she had once called home suffer while being denied the chance to help ignited a fire within her. "I won't stand by and do nothing," she told Ethan. "I may be unfit in their eyes, but I can help. I have to." Ethan nodded. "I know you can. And I'll be right beside you." Using her drones and devices, Lyra began mapping the enemy ship's movements. She noticed patterns in their formations and weaknesses in their patrol paths. With careful observation, she devised an improvised strategy. Abandoned machinery from the outskirts could be repurposed to create energy traps, slowing the Zarathi ships and disrupting their formations. Lyra worked tirelessly, assembling devices, programming drones, and coordinating with Ethan to ensure every tool was in place. Hours passed, and the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant orange and purple. The Zarathi forces advanced closer to the city, unaware of the hidden obstacles awaiting them. The first encounter occurred near the eastern sectors, where Lyra had set up a series of energy nets disguised as ruins. A small squad of Zarathi scouts flew too close, triggering the nets. Their ships shuddered and sparks flew as they struggled against the traps. Lyra's drones darted between them, sending signals to disorient their navigation systems. From the safety of the outskirts, Lyra and Ethan watched as the enemy faltered. "It's working," Ethan said, amazement in his voice. "You did this. You saved lives already." Lyra felt a mix of relief and pride, but she knew the larger battle was still ahead. The Zarathi main fleet was approaching, larger and more dangerous than anything she had faced. As the night deepened, the city's alarms sounded. Ilari citizens evacuated to safer zones, while some brave soldiers attempted to engage the enemy. Lyra observed the scene, her mind racing. She realized that she could not only create obstacles, but also guide the Ilari forces using her drones. By transmitting real-time positions of enemy ships, she could help defenders strike with precision. Her plan worked better than she anticipated. The combination of traps, drones, and human Ilari coordination slowed the Zarathi advance. Small victories lifted morale across the city, and even some Ilari soldiers began to acknowledge Lyra's contributions, though grudgingly. However, not everyone approved. Elders sent messages demanding she withdraw, claiming she was interfering and acting outside her permitted role. Lyra ignored them. Lives were at stake, and she knew that courage, not compliance, would make the difference. Hours into the battle, a critical moment arrived. A Zarathi ship targeted a district filled with civilians. Without hesitation, Lyra guided a swarm of drones to intercept, using electromagnetic pulses to disable the ship's propulsion. The vessel tumbled, sparks flying, and crashed harmlessly into the outskirts. A cheer rose from nearby citizens and defenders, and Ethan's eyes shone with pride. "Lyra, you just saved dozens of lives," he exclaimed. Lyra's heart raced, a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and determination. "We can't stop yet. There are more ships coming." Throughout the night, she continued to direct operations, using her knowledge, ingenuity, and human-inspired strategies. Drones became scouts, improvised traps slowed advancing ships, and communication networks allowed defenders to anticipate attacks. Slowly, the Zarathi were forced to retreat, frustrated by the unexpected resistance. By dawn, the city was battered but standing. Fires smoldered, structures were damaged, and citizens were exhausted, but the Zarathi threat had been repelled, for now. Lyra collapsed against a wall, her body trembling from exhaustion, but her mind raced with ideas for future defenses. Ethan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Lyra, you did this. You saved the city when no one else would. Even the elders can't ignore what you've done." Lyra shook her head, disbelief mixing with pride. I just did what I could, but maybe this shows that being different isn't a weakness." News of her actions spread quickly. Citizens spoke of the outcast girl who had defended the city with intelligence, courage, and creativity. Even some elders, though reluctant, had begun to reconsider their rigid rules. Lyra's uniqueness, once dismissed, had become an essential asset in a moment of crisis. That evening, Lyra and Ethan sat atop a damaged tower overlooking the recovering city. Smoke still rose from certain districts, but the people were safe. For the first time, Lyra felt that her life had purpose, that her actions could change the world. "You were incredible today," Ethan said, his voice filled with admiration. I always knew you had potential, but today you showed everyone what that really means. Lyra smiled, tired but determined. Maybe this is the start. Maybe my story isn't over, and maybe the city and the elders will finally see me for what I truly am. Ethan nodded. It's just the beginning. There will be more challenges, more tests, but I believe in you, and I know that together we can face anything. Lyra looked at the recovering city, at the people who had once ignored her, and felt a surge of hope. She was no longer merely an outcast. She was a protector, a strategist, and a symbol of what courage, intelligence, and determination could achieve, even in the eyes of those who had cast her aside. And somewhere in the distance, among the ruins and the quiet streets, Lyra knew that her journey was far from over. The threat had passed, but the world remained vast and full of unknown challenges. With Ethan beside her, she felt ready to face whatever came next. For the first time, Lyra realized that being different was not a limitation, it was a gift. And in the heart of a society that had once rejected her, she had begun to carve a place where she truly belonged. The sun rose over Violia, painting the crystalline city with hues of gold and violet. The city had recovered from the Zorathi attack, but the memory of the threat lingered. Lyra's name had spread across the districts like wildfire. Citizens whispered about the outcast girl who had defended the city with ingenuity and courage. Even some of the elders, though slow to admit it, were beginning to acknowledge her contributions. Lyra herself felt a mix of pride and apprehension. Her life had changed dramatically in a matter of days. The girl who had once been cast aside as unfit now held the attention of humans and aliens alike. Yet she knew that admiration alone was not enough. The city remained vulnerable, and the elders still clung to their rigid rules. Ethan arrived at her shelter with a quiet smile. Good morning, Lyra. Ready for another day of discovery? Lyra nodded. Yes, but today I want to do more than just build devices. I want to make sure the city is safe for everyone and maybe show the elders that I can help in ways they've never considered. Ethan's eyes sparkled with pride. Then let's get to work. They spent the morning preparing a demonstration of Lyra's strategies. Using drones, holographic maps, and improvised traps, Lyra created a model of the city showing how she could anticipate threats and coordinate defenses. The goal was not to challenge the elders, but to provide undeniable proof that intelligence and creativity could protect lives, even if it came from someone deemed unfit. By afternoon, they received an unexpected invitation. The Council of Elders requested Lyra's presence at the Grand Hall of the city. The message was formal, cautious, and filled with subtle warnings. Lyra's heart raced as she approached the hall. She had never been welcomed inside such an important place. The Grand Hall was magnificent, filled with crystal pillars that reflected light in dazzling patterns. Elari leaders sat in their high chairs, observing her with expressions that were a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and begrudging respect. Lyra Vorath, the eldest, began, his voice calm but commanding. We have heard of your actions during the recent attack. You have demonstrated abilities that even some of our soldiers lacked. Explain yourself. Lyra stepped forward, her hands steady despite the tension in the room. I only did what I could to help the city survive. I used knowledge, observation, and creativity to protect lives. I did not act to challenge you or the laws of the Elari. I acted because it was necessary. The elders exchanged murmurs. Some were clearly uncomfortable. Others were intrigued. Lyra continued, showing the models, drones, and holographic maps she had prepared. She explained each strategy, each device, and how they had prevented losses during the attack. Ethan stood beside her, offering support and adding technical explanations where necessary. His presence reminded the elders that humans were allies, not intruders, and that collaboration could bring advantages they had not considered. After she finished, a heavy silence filled the hall. Lyra's presentation had been flawless, but she knew that winning the elders' approval would take more than evidence. It would require courage and persistence. Finally, one of the younger elders spoke. Your methods are unconventional, yet the results are undeniable. How did you learn so much in such a short time? Lyra met the elder's gaze. By observing, experimenting, and being willing to learn from others, even humans, knowledge is not limited to our species. Wisdom can come from anywhere. Vorath's expression softened slightly. You speak with confidence and clarity, and yet you were deemed unfit. Your actions challenge centuries of tradition. Why should we trust your judgment in the future? Lyra took a deep breath. Because actions prove value, not tradition alone. If the city is to survive future threats, we must embrace intelligence and creativity wherever it exists, even in those society considers outsiders. The hall remained quiet. Lyra could feel the tension, the uncertainty, and the subtle resistance of leaders who had never faced such a bold argument. Then, unexpectedly, a warning alarm sounded. A small scouting party of the Zarathi had been detected near the outskirts. Their ships moved with precision, testing the city's defenses. Lyra's heart pounded, but she remained calm. She turned to the council. If you will allow me, I can coordinate a response. We can protect the city again. The elders hesitated, torn between pride, fear, and tradition. Finally, Vorath nodded. You have permission, but remember the city watches you, Lyra. Any failure will be yours alone. Lyra nodded respectfully. I understand. She returned to the outskirts with Ethan, quickly deploying drones, activating traps, and coordinating with human and Elari defenders. The scouting ships were clever, but Lyra's strategies were sharper. Using real-time observations, she predicted their movements, guiding defenders to intercept them efficiently. Small victories soon accumulated, forcing the Zarathi to retreat once more. When the battle ended, Lyra's efforts had saved countless lives. Citizens cheered from safe zones, and even some skeptical elders could not deny her contributions. Returning to the Grand Hall, Lyra noticed a subtle shift in the council's demeanor. Respect replaced suspicion, and curiosity replaced fear. Some elders whispered among themselves, clearly reconsidering the definitions of fitness in their society. Vorath addressed her again. Lyra, your actions have proven that our measures of worth are incomplete. You have shown courage, intelligence, and leadership. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered our ways. Lyra bowed slightly. Thank you, Vorath. I only wish to help and to ensure the city is safe and prosperous for everyone. Ethan smiled quietly beside her, proud of the young alien who had once been cast aside. Together, they had demonstrated that cooperation, ingenuity, and courage could overcome prejudice and tradition. In the following weeks, Lyra's reputation grew. She began leading small groups of volunteers, human and Elari, in training exercises, simulations, and experiments. Her unique perspective allowed her to see potential in tools, strategies, and alliances that others had overlooked. The city became safer, stronger, and more connected. Yet challenges remained. Not all elders were convinced. Some continued to resist change, fearing that tradition would be lost. Others worried that humans had too much influence, even as they acknowledged the effectiveness of the collaboration. Lyra knew she would need to balance innovation with respect for culture, navigating both politics and strategy to continue making a difference. One evening, while walking through a quiet street with Ethan, Lyra reflected on how far she had come. I never imagined I would be in a place like this, she said softly. From being cast aside to this, leading, helping, protecting, it feels like another world. Ethan nodded. You earned it, Lyra. You didn't wait for permission. You acted when it mattered. That's what true strength is, Lyra smiled. But it hasn't been easy. I still feel the weight of their judgment sometimes. Even when people respect me, I know some still doubt my abilities. That's normal, Ethan said. Change is hard for people. They cling to old ways. But you're showing them that there's a better path. You're not just helping the city, you're helping your people grow. Lyra thought about the Zarathi attack, the lessons she had learned, and the trust she had built with humans and sympathetic Elari. She realized that being unfit in the eyes of tradition did not define her. Her actions, her decisions, and her courage did. The next day, she returned to the Grand Hall to propose a larger initiative, a combined human-Elari defense network, integrating drones, sensors, and communication systems to anticipate and repel threats before they reached the city. Some elders were hesitant. This is unprecedented, one said. We have never allowed outsiders such influence over our defenses. Lyra remained calm. The city is not ours to guard alone. We must use all knowledge and tools available. The past cannot protect us from future dangers. We must adapt. After hours of debate, the council approved a trial period. Lyra's plan would be implemented under her supervision. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. Her influence was growing, and her ideas were finally being taken seriously. As the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the city, Lyra and Ethan walked together along a high terrace overlooking the sparkling streets. Citizens moved below, unaware of the quiet revolution happening above them. "You've changed everything," Ethan said quietly. "Not just for the city, but for your people. You're showing them a new way forward." Lyra looked out at the horizon, feeling a sense of purpose and hope. "I only wish I could do more. There is still so much to learn, so much to prepare for, but I will keep trying." "That is all I can do," Ethan nodded. "And that will be enough. You're not just an outcast anymore. You're a leader, a protector, and a bridge between two worlds, and together we'll face whatever comes next." Lyra's heart swelled with determination. She knew the future would not be easy, and that challenges awaited her, both from external threats and from those unwilling to change. But she also knew that she was no longer powerless. Her skills, her courage, and her bond with Ethan gave her strength beyond measure. As night fell over Violia, the city rested in relative peace. The outcast girl, once rejected and alone, now stood at the forefront of innovation and protection. Her story was no longer one of despair. It was one of hope, courage, and the quiet revolution of ideas. Lyra looked to the stars, knowing that the universe held both dangers and opportunities, and she was ready to face them all. The morning light stretched across Violia, painting the crystal towers in soft gold and violet. The city was alive with activity. Citizens moved through the streets with a renewed sense of hope. Where once there had been fear and suspicion, now there was trust, curiosity, and quiet excitement. Lyra walked through the streets, observing the changes she had helped bring about. Her heart swelled with pride, but she knew that the journey was far from over. Months had passed since the Zorathi attack. During that time, Lyra had led a small but dedicated team of humans and Elari, developing a comprehensive defense network that combined technology, strategy, and real-time observation. Drones patrolled the outskirts, communication arrays connected every district, and trained volunteers were ready to respond to threats quickly. The Council of Elders had undergone a subtle transformation as well. While some elders remained cautious of change, many now recognized the value of flexibility, creativity, and intelligence, no matter the source. The society of the Elari had begun to evolve, slowly but surely, toward a system that valued contribution over rigid tradition. Lyra's influence had not gone unnoticed. Citizens looked to her not as an outcast, but as a symbol of courage, ingenuity, and possibility. Children mimicked her movements in training exercises, aspiring to think like her, act like her, and make a difference like her. One morning, Lyra received a message from the council requesting her presence in the grand hall. She knew the meeting would be important. As she approached, she felt the weight of anticipation in the air. The elders, some anxious and some proud, awaited her. "Lyra," Vorath began, his silver skin reflecting the sunlight streaming through the windows, "your efforts have reshaped our city and our society. We were wrong to cast you aside. You have demonstrated courage, intelligence, and leadership that surpasses expectations." Lyra listened quietly, her mind racing. The moment had come not only to hear their words, but to consider the future. Vorath continued, "In light of your contributions, the Council has decided to formally recognize you as a protector of the city. You will have the authority to lead training, coordinate defenses, and advise the Council on matters of security and strategy. Your role will no longer be limited by arbitrary rules of fitness." Lyra felt a surge of emotion. She had dreamed of this day in quiet moments, imagining a world where her abilities were valued. Now that dream was real. "Thank you, Vorath," she said, her voice steady. "I will do my best to serve the city and its people." Ethan, standing quietly beside her, smiled with pride. "You've earned this," he said softly. "Not because of their approval, but because of who you are and what you've done." Lyra nodded. "I understand, and I will continue to prove that actions, courage, and intelligence matter more than tradition alone." The ceremony concluded, and Lyra stepped outside into the bright sunlight. Citizens gathered, some bowing respectfully, others cheering quietly. Children waved as she passed, and even those who had once whispered doubts now looked at her with admiration. Lyra realized that her journey had transformed not only her life, but the lives of those around her. Days turned into weeks, and Lyra continued her work. She organized training sessions for young Elari and humans alike, teaching them how to think creatively, act decisively, and work together across species. She developed new devices, combining human technology and Elari engineering in ways no one had attempted before. Each innovation strengthened the city, and with each success, Lyra's confidence and influence grew. Yet her work was not without challenges. Some elders still resisted change, and not all citizens were willing to accept human involvement in Elari affairs. But Lyra met these obstacles with patience and determination. She listened to concerns, explained her methods, and demonstrated results. Slowly, resistance turned into understanding, and skepticism gave way to trust. One evening, as the twin suns set and cast long shadows over the city, Lyra and Ethan stood atop a tower overlooking the sparkling streets. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Lyra said softly, taking in the view. "All this, it feels like we've made a difference." Ethan nodded. "You made a difference, Lyra. You showed everyone that being different is not a weakness. You turned what others saw as flaws into strengths." Lyra smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you, Ethan. You believed in me when no one else did." Ethan shook his head. "You believed in yourself too, I just helped you see it." As night fell, the city lights shimmered like stars brought to earth. The citizens of Violia slept safely, unaware of the quiet revolution that had taken place in their society. Lyra had changed not only the defenses of the city, but the hearts and minds of those who had once rejected her. In the days that followed, Lyra faced her greatest challenge yet. A new wave of Zarathi scouts had been detected approaching Violia. This time, the threat was larger and more organized. The elders, though nervous, turned to Lyra for guidance. Using the strategy she had developed, Lyra coordinated human and Elari forces with precision. Drones patrolled the skies, traps were activated, and communication networks ensured that every district was prepared. Lyra moved with confidence, directing operations, making split-second decisions, and anticipating the enemy's moves. When the Zarathi arrived, they were met with a well-prepared city. Lyra's traps slowed their advance, her drones disrupted their communications, and human Elari defenders struck with accuracy. The battle was intense, but Lyra's leadership ensured minimal damage to the city and its citizens. After hours of careful strategy, the Zarathi forces were forced to retreat. The city had been saved again, and this time there was no doubt about the value of Lyra's abilities. Even the most resistant elders acknowledged her contributions openly, praising her courage, intelligence, and leadership. As the dust settled, Lyra stood on a high terrace, looking out over the city she had helped protect. Citizens celebrated quietly, their trust in her growing with each passing day. She realized that she had transformed from an outcast into a protector, a leader, and a bridge between two worlds. Ethan joined her, his eyes filled with pride. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined," he said. "You've changed the city, the elders, and even the way your people think about themselves." Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment and hope. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us, humans and Elari working together. We've shown that cooperation, creativity, and courage can overcome even the greatest challenges." In the following weeks, Lyra continued to implement changes in Elari society. The concept of fitness was redefined to include intelligence, creativity, courage, and contribution. Children were encouraged to explore their talents, regardless of physical or genetic traits. Humans and Elari collaborated on technology, defense, and education, creating a new era of understanding and growth. Lyra's life had transformed completely. She had gone from being cast aside as unfit to becoming a symbol of hope and progress. Her bond with Ethan deepened, built on respect, trust, and shared adventures. Together, they inspired others to embrace differences, to explore new ideas, and to face challenges with courage. One evening, Lyra and Ethan stood on a tower overlooking the city, the twin suns setting behind distant mountains. "Do you think it will last?" Lyra asked quietly. "The changes, the cooperation, will it continue?" Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "It will last because people see the value in it. You've shown them that being different is not a weakness, and that courage and intelligence matter more than tradition alone. The seeds you've planted will grow." Lyra looked out at the city, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. She realized that her journey was not just about surviving or proving herself. It was about shaping a future where everyone had a chance to contribute, where differences were celebrated rather than shunned. With the stars appearing in the violet sky, Lyra felt a sense of purpose and hope. The outcast girl had become a leader, a protector, and a catalyst for change. Her story, once filled with rejection and isolation, had transformed into one of courage, ingenuity, and lasting impact. As she turned to Ethan, Lyra smiled. This is just the beginning. There's still so much to do, so much to learn, but I'm ready. Ethan smiled back. And I'll be right here with you. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. The city of Violia thrived, strengthened by the efforts of humans and Ilari working side by side. Lyra's legacy was not only in the defenses she had built or the battles she had won, but in the hearts of the people she had inspired. They had learned that courage, intelligence, and kindness were more valuable than any rigid rule or tradition. And somewhere in the quiet streets and sparkling towers, Lyra knew that her journey, though filled with challenges and uncertainties, had created a brighter future for all. She had transformed a society, built bridges between worlds, and discovered the true power of being different. For Lyra, the outcast was no more. She was a protector, a leader, and a symbol of hope. Her story had reached its first true conclusion, but the universe awaited, filled with opportunities, adventures, and discoveries yet to come. And with Ethan by her side, Lyra was ready to face them all.